Jesus Christ. Check, check. All right, we're good to go. All right, so happy Sabbath, y'all. Happy New Year. Most High Christ bless. It's been a while. It's been quite a while. Quite overdue. Tonight's topic is all his banks overflow. Right, all his banks overflow the new year. Um, First off, all praise to the Most High. Like I said, it's been quite a while, but um, still in the truth, right? So that's a blessing. One new year we have here, um, and the Most High is still with me. So all praises for that. So tonight's topic. So there was, I hope, and some people might maybe might understand this, but some people may not. So I'm hoping that this does help some brothers and sisters, like any class, but like specifically something like this because it's something that I dealt with and trying to wade through and trying to find some answers to. So it took a while, um, but the Most High always shows up how He always does. So come to understand it's maybe like almost 2 years ago, year and a half ago now, about the concept of the understanding of the new year, right? So everybody that's been in the truth for quite some time, however, whatever time of duration you've been in it, you've been taught a certain way, right? It makes sense. Like brothers will say things like, new brothers and sisters come into the truth. And the worst thing that you can do is learn from everybody, right? The thing is that you get into the truth and you, wherever you feel like you may be comfortable at, my recommendation is to stay there, right? Because eventually, what's going to happen is the Most High build your spirit up, and you might see things that you didn't see before, and then you need to remove yourself from the situation, and then the Most High will navigate how you need to move, right? So don't jump from place to place to learn all over the place. It's not necessary. You'll get what you need when you need it, right? So the Most High operates like that. I'm no different. Brothers we move with that came up in the truth together, we're the same. I say that to say we were all taught a specific way, right? You don't want to run, like I said, all over the place and try to kind of confuse what you're trying to lay as a foundation when somebody else comes in from the side and lays something on top of it. You kind of need to get yourself grounded to understand what you're doing and how you need to move first and foremost. So I'm in that boat, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I was taught a certain way. This isn't a knock on anybody that taught me. It's actually a kind of a concept of like looking at Daniel 12 about knowledge increasing in the end days, right? So everybody has their starting point. Everybody has a time of how they're going to grow. The New Year concept for me took some time. It seemed kind of uh, oftentimes you might be in a situation where you're with somebody and you don't press. I don't know if press is the wrong word. You don't question certain things because you're just kind of learning, right? Then you kind of go with the flow. You trust who you're with, and then eventually the Most High might show you some things to be like, this doesn't add up, and then you either reconcile it with whoever you're with, or you need to jump ship. This isn't a reason for any situation I've had in the past, I'm just explaining the point of this is how kind of things flow when you're in the truth, right? So the New Year is one of the things that I was taught as well. But eventually there was some things I ran into that I couldn't answer. Um, and I asked, and people kind of gave me the same answers as typical, which I don't blame them. They were taught how they were taught. But it kind of gets you on this rabbit hole in this wheel of kind of like, well, start digging, and the Most High eventually will reveal answers to you, right? Like Proverbs 25 says, it's it'll be a type of righteousness for us to seek out, truth, to discover different things. So we figure that out through the Most High's words. Um, so New Year was a certain concept. Um, Calculating it, I should say, how to arrive at the new year. So I'm gonna start off in Hosea 6, right? Um, let's see. Okay, apologies. So let's start off in Hosea 6, right? And I'll hopefully this will make sense as I go along. It doesn't. Some people might see this and kind of not think about it in the way I'm thinking about it now, as far as just kind of like this epiphany I've arrived at. The others might have known already, depending on again how they were taught or how the Most High moves them. So let's open up with Hosea 6 real quick. To try to lay a foundation I'm going to circle back to, right? So, um, Hosea 6 in verse 1. I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, Come and. Apologies. So it says, Come and let us learn. Excuse me. Come, let us return unto the Lord. For he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight, right? Hopefully I'll touch on this later at the end, but this is kind of the point that we're arriving at, right? With all the stuff that's happening, the chaotic wars and stuff that's going on, again, the reason for all this chaos is because Israel is going to be delivered. That's the same thing from ancient Egypt, right? And this kind of fits because, again, this is the same thing we've been told to try to understand how to move and pay attention to us calculating these time frames, because our exodus was around the time when the Most High said you start paying attention to how to label these months, right, and start to understand these timelines. So, verse 3 is kind of the point. Then shall we know, if we follow on to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning. He shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and former rain in the earth. Now we're going to circle back to this, right? Now, the former and latter rain are very key to understanding certain principles. I guess you would say the importance from the Genesis to Revelation, the concept of how the Bible flows. Not just the new year, but this is extremely important, right? So understand, like, we're a part of creation, right? We might sometimes look at things, and I think I mentioned this in the past, about there's certain things that you can see, and if you understand what you're looking at, you can derive a lot of answers from, or answer a lot of questions you might have, if you understand what you're paying attention to. Most don't. People in the truth don't, because they kind of perceive the world how a person would absent the spirit, right? So once the Most High kind of opens your eyes to certain things, then you start looking at things that you've been staring at for a long time a lot differently. So this is one of them concepts. The former and the latter rain is extremely important. So even though you're seeing and witnessing creation on a day-to-day basis, remember that we ourselves are creation. We are a part of creation, right? So there's going to be gems in that. This is a genius design, and I say this a lot, but it can't be understated. There's a genius design to this construct, right? And we're a part of that genius design. So there's so many things you can understand. The reason why I like Sirach 3 and 23 is there about not being curious in unnecessary matters, because there's so much more that the Most High shows us that we still can't compute. We still can't understand, right? But once you start to kind of grow a little bit and time goes on, your mindset starts to shift a little bit and you start being like, aha, this makes sense. This is the reason why the Most High had this done. This is the reason why this works the way it does. These things make sense, right? But that takes time. But it's a great feeling to kind of move through life and move through the earth with a level of understanding, not to be prideful, but when you view other people in your vicinity and how they move, they don't know what's happening at all. So there's a level of comfort, there was a level of uh, anxiety at times because you know what's coming, right? It's like the age old thing of like, would you rather know that you're going to die or kind of just be clipped, you know, randomly and not know when it's coming, right? So we're going to circle back to this concept. So keep that in mind about this creation and this design, because a lot of things funnel back to this original premise, right? So let's go to Daniel chapter 2. Yeah, Daniel chapter 2 and verse I'm going to start at verse 19. Daniel chapter 2 verse 19, it says, "Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and set up kings. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things, and he knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth in them." Now, initially I took this scripture wrong, like this talking about years ago, not now, not even recent. But it's kind of surface when you read this on surface level. He changes the times and the seasons because, again, once you go on a journey of like trying to figure something out and trying to get some answers to certain questions, you those veils start to lift a lot. When the things that you looked at a certain way differently before, they start to look very in depth, applying those things to the kind of trying to get to the root of the answer the question that you have, right? So he changes the times and the seasons. We have another concept like this in Daniel 7, right? So let's go to Daniel 7. We read this all the time. And we're trying to bridge the gap on the understanding, right? Depending on somebody's looking at it. So we read this all the time. Daniel 7 in verse 25, right? "He shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time," right? So when we look at Daniel 2, the Most High is the power behind things changing. That's what it means. The idea, and I don't know would believe this or think like this, but just to be put out there to maybe lessen the confusion. The Most High does things and says things, and he sticks to his word. He's not like a hopper. He doesn't jump from point to point and changing different things, because the Most High is stable and steady. He moves in one direction, and that's good for us, as the scriptures say, that we are not confounded. So the Most High sets things up a particular way. So when the scriptures say that he changes times and seasons, that means he's the power behind why these things are shifting. Not that if the Most High decides to, he'll set the seasons in motion: spring, summer, fall, winter, And then when you get to the end of winter, he'll just decide to do summer again. That's not how the Most High works. He's the power behind the reason why things are changing, right? The same way is a good example of Christ being given the power to do all things. He's working through the commands of his Father, right? Those things still go back to the Most High of him having ultimate control. But he just has avenues on how he distributes the power, how things need to be done. So the sun, the moon, whatever it may be, the Most High is the power behind these things, right? When we're thinking about changing times and laws like the so-called white man has done, he can't really change anything but the things that seem to be on the surface level, or the confusion can be put into place, right? It doesn't necessarily um, alter the Most High's things that he does. It's just the magic trick, like the magic show. We know that he didn't really eat the card, the king. He didn't eat it. It's some magic trick he's doing that we don't know about, right? It's sleight of the hand. That's what the white man does. So when we look at things and concepts like he thinks to change times and laws, that's what he does, right? So here's an example. Let's go to Luke chapter 2. And I'm going to try not to make this crazy lengthy, but it might run a little bit long, depending on how I get through some of this. So I'm just trying to make this as clear as possible for those that maybe not understand. Because again, like I said, I didn't. So Luke 2 and verse 1. Thinking to change times and laws. Think about this. Luke 2 verse 1, it says, "And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria." So think about it this way. August, I don't know if people know, but August is named after Caesar Augustus, right? The same way we look at Sunday, Monday, you're not going to find all that stuff in the Bible. The same way you're not going to find February or whatever, June. You're not going to find these things in the Bible. These things were just attached in history, in past history, and it's been pushed and kept through time immemorial. Like the same way we look at Christmas. You're going to find that in the Bible as far as keeping it and sustaining something. The idol worship explanation is there, but the idea of we need to put presents under the tree, we need to do all this other stuff, we need to keep Halloween, all these different things have been started from the past, which undoubtedly has pagan roots to them, and they push them to the modern day times, right? Modernity. So the same way Caesar Augustus attributed to him is the name of August, right? When anybody looks at their calendar, we know that August is the 8th month, right? But oct, like OCT in Latin, means 8, right? Like hexagon, like a 8-sided shape, right? If that's an 8-sided shape, right? Excuse me, an 8-sided shape, then why is it that when we get to something like October, which is our 10th month, that oct is attached to the 10th month instead of the 8th, right? The same way August is the 8th month, and the name is derived from, the name and how these things, the root words of these Latin words have changed, and they're not lining up with our calendar, right? So if an oct, OCT, should be attached to an 8, that should be August, right? Essentially, August should be called October. But we know that the name was named after this Caesar. But the confusion comes in when you look at these things, they don't make any sense, right? Just like sept, S-E-P, S-E-P-T is attached to September, right? That Latin root is 7. But September is our 9th month, right? So none of this stuff makes any sense. And this is when we're talking about examples of like Daniel 7. When we're talking about the so-called white man doing these different things and switching times and laws, the confusion comes in when we're trying to get back to our roots of understanding why things function the way that they do. The same way you have to go through all kinds of muck and mire to get to who the Jews are, right? Like they've dirtied the waters so badly. You got to find primary sources. You got to dig deep to find records just to figure out who you are. But that's the point, right? That's what the devil does. He comes and he confuses, muddies the waters, and then tells you that you're wrong. Tries to gaslight you even though you're right, right? That's what they do. That's kind of the purpose. So as you're deceived, they can stay in power and have a clear mind of what their agenda is, right? That's the point. New Year is no different. When these people are celebrating in January, they pull the wool over people's eyes, right? Because there's nothing new in the dead of winter. It doesn't make any sense. But when you're years ago in the world, you don't think about this. You're just living life. You see the ball drop, and you're just like, oh, Happy New Year. It's cool. Everybody drinking or whatever. So these are the concepts that you see. The same way you have like a, the same way you have like a the concept of what we just went through, the concept of daylight savings time, right? There's no need to mess with the time. Why would you, right? You'll when you start diving into like the history behind these things. Daylight saving time is one of them. You'll see like a Peter Wellington. You'll see a Benjamin Franklin. I think was one of them. It was a William Wellet. He was like a housing developer in London, right? In the UK. He was one of the ones that championed this thing called the Summer Act of 1916, right? It was pushed into like a British time. Some of this stuff had to revolve around time frames for the World War One too, right? But the way that they push forward and pull back time, this guy William Wellet made a comment, and again, it's kind of like the concept of like a Bill Gates. Like this guy is a computer guy. Why is he the go-to person on vaccines? Doesn't make any sense, right? It's not supposed to, but you ain't supposed to ask these questions. The same thing with this guy William Willett. He's a housing developer, and this guy is the one championing moving time forward and backward, right? This is the massive confusion when you start to try to figure things out and being like, why is this operating this way? Why is this time frame this? Why is this month lined up like this? These numbers don't match up. This guy William Willett made a comment and said he would like to add time to the back half of the day, right? More sunlight later in order to finish more rounds of golf because he didn't like playing in the dusk, right? This is the thought process of some of these guys. So daylight savings time is just another concept, right? When you look at something like Hawaii, they don't do daylight savings time. So ironically enough, if you don't mess with the time, as the natural course of things go, as we start to edge closer and closer to spring and summer, the time of the sun staying out longer is just a natural process, right? The way that the earth moves and stuff like that. So as we're seeing these things play out normally, there's no reason to touch none of this stuff. But this is where the confusion comes in, right? Every concept of life and reality as we know it have been messed with. Even the fabric of time as we know it has been messed with. So all the confusion comes in, and nobody knows what rabbit hole to go down because it all leads to the same person, but there's a million different rabbit holes, right? So there's so much confusion on trying to figure out basic concepts like the new year. So people look at you like you got three heads when you say things like Happy New Year in March or something. They be like, they're saying this back in January, and they're looking at you like you crazy. But again, it's like the John 19 scripture. I think it's John 19 or 18. Or is it 15? You're not a part of this world, right? So like this concept of how you're living and how you're operating is just strange to everybody else because they're all operating on a different mindset, a different wavelength of walking behind a deceiver, and all the deception has been so heavy that they believe it's true, right? So you kind of help who you can. But this is again the reason why you have Israelites on the four corners bring back the understanding to our people, whether they want to be Kunin or whether they want to be okay, I can accept this, or it sounds intriguing. Let me go search these things for myself, and that's where kind of the real the pride comes in at when you've really put time and effort in to figure something out, and you see it now, you got into it, and it's a memorable thing because it's a purposeful intent that you had in trying to figure out whatever it is, right? A lot of people don't want to do this in these days. They don't care. They're looking at the wars and all this other stuff and just be like, who's next up? Who's next up for the superpower? And our conversations is nobody. The scriptures are playing out the way they need to play out. So let's go to Genesis 7. I'm going to show you something real quick. Genesis 7. We're not going to read this whole. We'll probably skip a lot of this. It might speed some of the time up, but Genesis 7 is when we have the storyline of the ark and Noah, right? This is, again, some of the things I went down trying to figure certain things out. I've seen people do it in the past because there is a timeline here, right? But the timeline maybe looks good on the surface, but it doesn't give you a definitive answer. So Genesis 7, um, let's look at this verse. Genesis 7 and here we go. Genesis 7 and 6. It says, and Noah was 600 years old when the flood of the waters was upon the earth, right? He was 600. So when we start looking at different timelines and lengths, and we're trying to figure things out, this is a good thing. But ultimately, you'll come to the conclusion that I came to is that the answer is somewhere else. But this kind of is a building block on top of something you're trying to learn. So Noah, when the flood starts, is 600, right? Jump down to verse 11. It says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Now, we're not going to read all this, but these are some key points to take from this. If you start running down the numbers in the timeline of Noah in Genesis 7, what you'll find is you'll find, because the concept of most people's understanding is a 30-day cycle for a month, right? If you do the 100, I think it was 150 days between when the flood started, and then you have like a 5 month. If you take the months as we know them as 30 days, right? I'm trying to make this not confusing. So if we take the months and we understand it, trying to calculate how many days we think are in a year, because this is all going to play in what I'm talking about. 30 days per month, right? Let's do it now. 30 days per month times 12, right? 30 days times 12 months is 360 days. Our calendar goes on a timeline of 365 days, right? Now they'll break this down and say that the solar year is 365, but the lunar year is 354, right? Now we understand as we read the scriptures, the Most High tells us calculate timelines month to month based on the moon. But the reason why I went here is because this is the first time you'll see the word month pop up, right? Now we don't get till understanding the concept of counting per se until Exodus, which we'll come back there. It's a marker for us to understand, right? But this is just interesting as you'll see this first pop up month, because we know a month is an association with the moon, right? But we don't see these things telling us to start calculating and keeping until Exodus, but we'll get there. So now, if 30 days per month, which most people, I'm not saying everybody does, but some people do, so they're just trying to figure things out, right? Our concept in the world is we're trying to get to 365 days. That's what they tell us. So 12 months, 30 days per month is 360, which leaves us 5 days short, which also convolutes, or when we're juxtaposing the sun and the moon, the solar and the lunar, it's not like that. We believe that, I understand that they work together, but we understand that it's like it's like the face of a watch, right? You have the hour and you have the second hand, right? These things are there for our understanding, as the scriptures tell us. So we're calculating times of the day, which is the sun, times of the month, which is the moon, right? It's a clock, as we understand it, right? That's going to leave us short in what we're told is 365 days. Now, how do you make up the 5? And this is where it kind of gets crazy, because if you are looking at this and paying attention to this in this concept, it's going to confuse you anyway, right? So what people do is, as we kind of know without fail, every single year we have seemingly days drift backwards, right? There's nothing you can really do about it. It's just that the time frame last year, like you can plug in anytime. I hate to use this, but these are just markers, right? Christmas 2025. Usually these days just backtrack, right? They're not, these every day doesn't fall on the same one every year, and people think that that's crazy, but it's not. The way that we understand these different things and the world teaches us is just confusion. So what happens is you'll have concepts like people saying things like the double Adar, right? Which Adar goes back to like Babylonian names for the 12th month of the year. So as we continue on moving forward and the days seemingly drift back, something has to take place in order to autocorrect this because it doesn't make any sense because we're going to drifting back too far is going to cause problems, right? So we have concepts like people saying things like the double Adar, right? Doubling the month of Adar, right? Adding that, which would bring you to the next side of somebody saying, I don't believe in a double Adar because it's not in scripture, but I believe that there's 13 months. That's what they'll say. And you ask them, okay, cool. Show me in the scriptures where there's 13 months. I'm going to show you something real quick. Let's go to First Chronicles 12. First Chronicles 12. Excuse me. First Chronicles 27. I'm sorry. First Chronicles 27. Right? And it's important to always do this so the chaos can be cut out. As it is written. So anybody that tries to box you in or talk something outside of the scriptures, don't listen to them. You might not have the answers. Pray to the Most High and give it time, right? But don't let somebody kind of put you in a position to try to tell you something that's not written. So especially if you see something counter to what they're saying that is actually written, that disproves their point. So First Chronicles 27 is kind of the point. This is a counter to a double in Adar or a 13th month, right? First Chronicles 27 and verse 1. It says, now the children of Israel after their number, to wit, the chief fathers and captains of thousands and hundreds and their officers that served the king in any manner of the courses which came in and went out month by month throughout all the months of the year. Of every course were 24,000. So this is going to show you what we understand the concept biblically outside, well, not outside of, the world teaches this too. Just the confusion between January to December is all chaotic. But the outline is correct, which we're reading now, right? So all the months of the year are going to be accounted for here, as it is written. So this is verse, we're going to jump around. So this is verse, I'll read verse 2 and 3 and then we'll jump. Verse 2, over the first course of the first month was Jashobeam, the son of Zabdiel, and his course were 24,000. Of the children of Perez was the chief of all the captains of the hosts for the first month. Right? Now, we're going to jump just to speed up. Verse 4, and over the course of the second month. Right? Verse 5, the third captain of the host for the third month. Verse 7, the fourth captain for the fourth month. Verse 8, the fifth captain for the fifth month. Verse 9, the sixth captain for the sixth month. Verse 10, the seventh captain for the seventh month. Verse 11, the eighth captain for the eighth month. Verse 12, the ninth captain for the ninth month. Verse 13, the 10th captain for the 10th. Verse 14, the 11th captain for the 11th. And verse 15, the 12th captain of the 12th month. Now I'm going to read verse 16 to see if we see a 13th. Furthermore, over the tribes of Israel, the ruler of the Reubenites was Eleazar, the son of Zikri. Of the Simeonites, Shephatiah, the son of Makkah. So there is no 13th month here, right? You don't find one in scripture. And this is the reason why when you're trying to nail down some things and trying to get to the understanding of it, it has to line up. It has to. Or else we're running into an issue of a Deuteronomy 4 situation which we're adding or we're taking away from the word. And this is a problematic situation because what the Most High gave us to understand is already here, and we have to figure it out. That's why it's always a good thing to look at yourself, the Bible, as like this mirror. I'm a reflection of it. There's imperfections in the mirror. There's imperfections in the mirror, not the mirror itself, but the imperfections is the reflection in it. So I have to figure it out. That's on me to figure it out, especially if it's definitive that there's 12 months. So anybody ever says, well, there's actually supposed to be 13 months. Well, that's not what the Bible says. Now you're gonna have to go against the Bible, and that's what it says, right? So if a person says there is 13 months, and I'm not trying later on, hopefully, I want to point out that I'm not talking about I'm not trying to play semantics. I'm just addressing as it is written, right? So another thing you won't find is you won't find summer solstice and you won't find winter solstice, right? As people will try to point those out as markers for the new year. Those are on the calendars as we understand them because that's what the world goes by. But if we're biblical and following biblical principles, I don't never see no summer solstice or spring equinox. I don't see none of that in the scriptures. It's not there. So then once you start a limit, it's like the same thing when somebody says Deuteronomy, not Deuteronomy. Well, Deuteronomy 8 is the curses, right? When somebody says to you, what are you? And they say African American, and then you shoot that down, right? And then they say, I'm black, and you shoot that down. Then they say, well, I'm mixed somewhere. Well, you shoot that down. I'm American. That just means citizen, so you shoot that down. Now you're left with an empty plate. So what are you? I'm going to keep asking the question because none of that stuff that you said is what you are. So what are you? So a person runs out of ammo because they don't have any answers, right? It's the same thing with this. Is you're shooting down concepts that we understand. I don't know what that was. We're shooting down concepts as we understand. None of these things are lining up, and I'm cleaning your plate of the things that you claim that you were understanding or eating off of, right? You don't have anything else left. There's no bullets left in the ammo. So then you got to keep digging and trying to figure out the answer because you can't come to me biblically and tell me it starts in the spring. Okay, what's that mean? You know, when it's not cold anymore. When I see a plant. You can't say that because the Bible doesn't say that, right? You can't say that it was 13 months because the Bible doesn't say that. You can't say there's a spring equinox because the Bible doesn't say that. So when you're digging through these things and trying to find these answers and you don't have any, you're still left with the same problem, which is as the time keeps going forward, the days keep going backwards, right? So it seems like we're losing time. That's what it looks like, right? So this is another thing that kind of got me. I don't even know why I thought about this, but interestingly enough, all praise be to the Most High. Interestingly enough, I didn't think I would go, like this thought wouldn't pop into my head, but as it did, and I go searching, there it is again, the answers were there, right? So as the time drifts backwards, you can't go too far back because we're going to have feasts, what we consider to be outside the seasons, right? So I'm going to show you some staple examples that people can't get around, right? Let's go to 1 Maccabees 4. So what that means. So let's go to 1 Maccabees 4, right? 1 Maccabees 4 and verse 52. It says, now on the 25th day, which is the 25th day, of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, right? So now we have a 25th day on the 9th month. For those of you that have been in the scriptures and been in the truth long enough, you know what happens in this month, but we're just using it for reference, right? For those that don't know, Happy to introduce you to it. So this is the 25th day on the 9th month, which the month is called Caslu, right? Now, verse 59. It says, moreover, Judas and his brethren, not the those that don't know, this is a mighty Judas, not the one with Christ, right? Moreover, Judas and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar, which we come to know as the Feast of Dedication, for those that don't know, should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Caslu, with mirth and gladness, because we'll read in Second Maccabees 1 that these were patterned. Feast of Dedication was patterned after Tabernacles, right? So the 8 days. But the point is that this is in the 9th month. Now, there's no mention of what season. It just says season, right? Now, this is the kicker, because when you start seeing things like this and you start lining these up, even though the days are drifting, you never once see Israelites keeping things out of season. Now, how's that possible if the days keep going backwards? Doesn't make any sense, right? Let's go to Jeremiah. Let's go to Jeremiah 36. Stay with me. Jeremiah 36 in verse 20. And they went in to the king in the court, but they laid up the roll in the chamber of Elishama, the scribe, and told all the words in the ears of the king, right? This is Jehoiakim, at the time of Jehoiakim as the king. Verse 21. So the king sent Jehoiada to fetch the roll, and he took it out of Elishama's scribe chamber. And Jehoiada read it in the ears of the king and in the ears of all the princes which stood beside the king. Now watch this. Verse 22. Now the king sat in the winter house in the 9th month, and there was a fire on the hearth burning before him, right? In Amos 3, you'll see the same thing pop up, which is a summer house in Amos 3. Let's get it real quick. I'm going to just read it just in case. Amos 3. Amos chapter 3 in verse 15. It says, and I will smite the winter house with the summer house, and the houses of ivory shall perish, and the great houses shall have an end, saith the Lord. The kings had things set up for, like a lot of times with luxury purposes. They had different things in different places for different functions, right? So they had a place called the winter house. You now see a place called a summer house, right? The sticking point is in Jeremiah, we're talking about a king, Jehoiakim, which is the time of Jeremiah when Jeremiah was telling him to stop being wicked because Babylon's coming. He would just burn letters. He didn't care. And then they got taken over, right? Again, goes back to funnel back to this Adar word for the 12th month. That's neither here nor there, though. Jeremiah 36 is telling us that this king stood in the winter house in the 9th month. Now that 9th month is matching up again to the Feast of Dedication, right? Which we come to the infamous scripture that most of us already know, right? Let's go to John 10. Let's go to John 10 and let's read verse 22. Most of you already know this. And it says, verse 22, and it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter, right? So these things keep lining up. We know that Feast of Dedication, as it doesn't say here, but we know it's in the 9th month. And we know that ninth month is always fall and winter somehow, right? So even though these things are drifting as we understand the world as it works, right? Somehow the Israelites are keeping these things within the season from year to year to year. So here's a go to Proverbs 20. Here's a concept for you. I'm hoping I'm explaining this decent and everybody understands, but just very rudimentary, right? Proverbs 20. Um, this is interesting though. For those that have make sure you to see this. For those that have a 1611, right? Cambridge. Your Proverbs 20 will say something in there, right? The notation will be beside it. And for those that can see it, I want you to see it and look at it, just in case if you have this, right? So Proverbs 20 in verse 4 says, "The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing." Remember I said earlier, we're going to come back to it. The importance of us understanding that we are a part of creation. Just it's important. The summer and the latter rain are important. But for those that have the 1611, there's a notation besides that word cold. There's a 10 beside it. If you have this same book I have, you look to the left in the column, it says winter, right? Oddly enough, it says winter, right? But go to Proverbs 26, and this is what I meant by a sticking point of something that's kind of rudimentary, right? Think about the concept like this. Kind of probably the most simple way you can put it. Proverbs 26 in verse 1, right? As snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. Let's start from the back and work our way up. Honor is not seemly or right to be given to a fool because he's a fool, right? Foolish people are not typically honorable people. You're not giving them this level of reverence that you would give a real honest, an honorable person, which typically is not a foolish individual, right? Foolish people laugh at sin. So the same way we work our way up, snow is not fit for summer because it's out of season. So if somebody looks at this and says, we're supposed to keep, dedication should never fall in the 4th month. Doesn't make any sense. It should never fall in the 6th month. These things are lining up in the 9th month, year by year, and they ordained it that you keep it this way, season to season, year to year, in this same time frame, in this same season. So something's got to give if we don't understand the concept of why these things are happening or how they're seemingly keeping it some particular way, and we're having issues with it, right? Some people might not have issues with it. And this is the reason why I say this earlier. Some people might not understand it, but hopefully this is something that a person can take and understand it, because most people, I won't say most people, a lot of people do follow the congregation, and when they put a calendar out, that's the calendar, right? Is that a problem? No. Hopefully it lines up well. I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying is it still beneficial for you? Like the same way you're going to go to the gates, you're going to have judgment day for you and not your congregation. It's probably good something for you to learn, right? For something for you to know. So snow is not seemly for the summer, right? It's just out of pocket. It's out of season. Doesn't make any sense, right? Let's go to another one. Nehemiah chapter 8. Nehemiah 8. Nehemiah 8 and 13. It says, "And on the second day were gathered together the chief of the fathers of all the people, the priests and the Levites, unto Ezra the scribe, even to understand the words of the law. They found written in the law which the Lord had commanded by Moses, that the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month." Again, that's never going, you see that in Leviticus 23, right? There's a reason why these things are marked. So tabernacles or booths is going to be in the 7th month. what typically is the season before winter? Fall, right? I'm gonna say this too. People will say there's only like I've seen videos, and this is I come across this years ago too, because this is just the journey of understanding and trying to answer questions, right? I've seen videos of brothers, and hopefully this evolved, but this is years ago, right? This is old videos. But I've seen a brother put a video out and said that the only thing that we have is summer and winter. There's no spring, there's no fall, right? Because as it is written, not knocking them, as it is written, you don't see it. Now, I'm gonna give you a. So let's go to Sirach. Sirach, I think it's 51. I'm gonna give you a because I might just put this out there to put this out there. I might agree with a brother word for word verbatim with the fall situation, but interestingly, again, is that form and that latter rain. Blue letter, if you go look up in the blue letter, it talks about the autumn rain, right? Autumn still matches up with Exodus 22, but the word's not there. So I don't push against it, but I'd still lean on the understanding of there still being four, because there's three, obviously, but there is a distinction in this spring or this rain that falls in the autumn, right? So here's another one. This is Sirach 50 in verse Sirach 50 in verse 7. It says, as the sun shining upon the temple of the Most High, and as the rainbow giving light in the bright clouds, and as the flower of roses in the spring of the year, as lilies by the rivers of waters, and as the branches of the frankincense tree in the time of summer. So now, I wouldn't, to me, it's pretty clear. Somebody can try to, again, that's why I said I'll never knock a person that wants to go as it is written, because I don't think there's any other way to go, really, right? It's not even really knocking a person. Like, you can't knock them for going as it is written. This is, to me, is as it is written. So some people might see the scripture and still disagree. There's no such thing as spring. I'm just putting that out there for somebody to have kind of in their arsenal if they need it. But to give a different perspective of how a person looks at it, right? So Nehemiah 8 talks about tabernacles in the 7th month. You're not going to see it deviate from the 7th, which is interesting because in Nehemiah you see it in the 7th. Leviticus 23, you see it in the 7th. So it's not going to deviate. And these things are they're going to fall in a season, because right after that, if there's no such thing as autumn or there's no such thing as fall, right after that we roll into winter, right? So we're looking at these things in their seasons to be kept the way that they're kept. Two more. Let's go to Acts 27. Man, what the world? Acts 27. Acts 27, and let's jump down to verse 9. Verse 9. It says, now when much time was spent and was sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them. Now, again, for those that have the 16:11. You have a notation there as well. What is the fast that we know? This is atonement, right? Your notation is in number 4. It says the fast was on the 10th day of the month in the 7th month. Leviticus 23, 27, 29. This is atonement, right? So much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous because the fast was past, Paul admonished them. Let's keep reading. Verse 10. And said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those which were spoken by Paul. And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, to more part advised to depart thence also, if by any means they might attain to Phoenice, and there to winter, which is an haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest. Right? So now, even in this example, in the New Testament, we have an example of the fast happening first, and then winter follows. So you don't find no examples of none of these things falling out of season. You don't see these situations where the Israelites are keeping first fruits in the winter. You don't see none of this. So even if a person were to look at what I'm saying and say this is kind of crazy, you'd have to reconcile how you're going to answer for the days continue to drift back. You're going to have to answer it because we know obviously that if you don't do anything, it's going to stay the same, right? So now, Matthew just said 2 more, right? Matthew 24. Just want to say this as well. Matthew 24 in verse 32. It says, now learn a parable of the fig tree, which just the importance of this stuff is what I'm talking about. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branches is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. Now this is used metaphorically as a time, essentially somewhat of a dispensation of time, to understand, like, you understand, like Christ was telling the Pharisees about lowering, right? You understand the signs of the sky, you understand when it's going to rain, but you don't understand what time frame we're in or what's happening and why it's happening, right? The same way this example is used too, but it still holds true that the figs come in the summer, right? So these examples are purposeful and they're very in-depth if you understand what you're looking for and how to kind of articulate them and why the Most High is using these examples, because these are the things, again, we look for concepts outside of us so vast and so far beyond our understanding to try to grasp and comprehend, and our minds can't do it. But it's not necessary, like Sirach 3, if you have these examples of things that are right in front of our face that answer many of, not say all of them, probably on a level, if we did understand it, probably did. But many of the concepts that we have questions for are answered in front of our face. We just don't know how to work the equation. We don't know what we're looking at. So these are examples of these staples of these seasons and these things attributed to them. These feasts kept in these seasons, and we're trying to figure out how, right? So there needs to be some type of a marker that lets us know when the new year is. Because we can't just say things like, especially if our predecessors understood all this stuff, right? Like they didn't have some magic stick or some magic trick that they were doing to wave in the air or whatever it may be to figure this out, some genius concept. They just had the understanding of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how the Most High set things up, how to understand what the Most High set things up, right? They don't have these things as, you're not a magician trying to figure this stuff out. And here's another example real quick. Go to John, and this is the reason why I'm saying this, right? What is it? John John 18. Let's go to John 18. John 18 in verse 17. Let's jump up. 15. Let me give you the concept of what's happening. So Christ get taken, right? Most people understand this if they read it. Christ get taken, Peter follows, right? Long and the short of it. Verse 15. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. That disciple was known unto the high priest, and went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. But Peter stood at the door without. Then went out that other disciple which was known unto the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. Then saith the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, Art not thou also of this man's disciples? He saith, I am not. And we all know that this goes into the concept of the exchange of denying the Lord 3 times, right? Like Christ told Peter was going to do. But this is the point. Now, hold on, before I mention this too. Understand what time Christ was taken, right? We know that he is the fulfillment of the law. He's the one moving through prophecy, fulfilling these things. He is the literal flesh, the law in the flesh, right? So it's important to understand this because Christ was taken Passover week, right? That's what the scriptures say. So he's taken Passover week. I'm saying that to say this, verse 18. And the servants and officers stood there, who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves, and Peter stood with them and warmed himself. It's just to put on the surface of understanding, if we're saying, what's a marker for the new year? Well, when it's not cold no more. Well, this is Passover's in the new year, right? They already passed what we would consider to be the new year. They're walking up on Passover, right? Passover's imminent within a day or so. So it's cold. They're warming themselves, right? Now, Christ was taken in the night, not denying that there could be, it's not necessarily hot during the night in whatever month it may be for Passover. And I say that for a reason. But the concept of looking at it and being just like on the surface of being like when it's not cold no more, we can't just say that because we have the example of it being cold during Passover week. So what is the marker, right? Like somebody has to know for a marker. And this comes back to the point of what I was started off with in Hosea, right? Let's go to Isaiah 28. Isaiah 28 in verse 23. It says, Give ye ear and hear my voice. Hearken and hear my speech. Verse 24, Doth the plowman plow all day to sow, which is sowing and reaping, right? Doth he open and break the clods of his ground? When he have made plain the face thereof, doth he not cast abroad the fitches, and scatter cumin, and cast in the principal wheat, and the appointed barley, and the rye in their place? For his God doth instruct him to discretion, and does teach him. So the concept would be, would a person that's understanding times, seasons, the way things operate, would he know the time frame of when to plant, right? In order to reap later, right? When to sow, when to reap, right? A person needs to understand that concept. The same way that the Most High shows us an example for on face value for Ecclesiastes 3, right? There's a time to kill, there's a time to heal, there's a time for war, there's a time for peace, there's a time to reap, there's a time to sow, right? So we understand these things are time frames. The Most High set these things up for a reason. What we read in Daniel 2, the Most High is the power behind how these things operate, right? He is the reason for the season, right? So a person needs to understand this for a particular reason, right? It's a staple for you to understand this. Let's go to Jeremiah 5 and verse 24. Jeremiah 5 and verse 24. Now, we read in Isaiah 28 about that barley, right? It's important. Verse 24, Jeremiah 5 and 24. Neither say they in their heart, let us now fear the Lord our God, that giveth rain, both the former and the latter, in his season. He reserveth unto us the appointed weeks of the harvest. The Most High is the one doing it, right? So let's keep moving. I'll explain the rest of this in a minute. Let's go to Joel chapter 2. Joel, the book of the prophet Joel, chapter 2. Verse 23. Joel 2, verse 23. Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he hath given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in the first month. So, I'll mention this again for those that want to look it up. You plug in a verse like Joel 2:23 in blue letter, or we're going to read this exactly. We can go to Deuteronomy 11 now. So let's go to Deuteronomy 11. If you plug in Deuteronomy 11, which we'll read, if you plug in Hosea 6, which we read, if you plug in Joel 2:23, if you read, this is all over the Bible, right? A former and a latter rain. You plug the verse in, look up what former means. It'll show you autumn rain, and the latter will show you spring rain, right? For those that don't understand necessarily how important this concept is, Deuteronomy 11 in verse 14. This is when the Lord is talking about bringing Israel into the land, right? To get into the land of Canaan, right? Deuteronomy 11 verse 14. That I will give you the rain of your land in its due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that thou mayest gather in thy corn and thy wine and thine oil. And I will send grass in thy fields for thy cattle, that thou mayest eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. And then the Lord's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up heaven, that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, unless she perish quickly from off the good land which the Lord giveth you. Now, the reason why I say this is important, because think about this basic concept, which kind of seems like we're leaning into now. The concept of how important the cycle of the rain and the crops that come from the ground are. We die without it. That's kind of important. The same when we think about if we've gotten away from that and we've adopted this Edomite mindset in the construct of this place, we've assimilated into this so much that we don't think about none of that. Most of us don't have land anyway. And then we just go to the grocery store. But if they shut the grocery store down, everybody's chaotic. Some people might start stealing, right? Laws might be getting broken. So sustainability is there if we have what the Most High continues to give us, what he's always done, right? This is the lifeblood of all of us, of understanding the harvest time, because we die without it. The same thing you're reading in Genesis 8:22. It'll never stop for the seed time and the harvest time. That's the staple. And why is it important? Because all our feast days revolve around harvest time. All of them. So a person needs to understand this, because if the harvest time is tied to the feast day, then the only way to keep the feast day is if we get the harvest time lined up correctly, right? So they're intertwined. You can't get one, you can't get rid of one or the other, or switch them, or let things drift if we have specific harvests tied to specific feast days. So they have to be lined up correctly, right? Remember, a person can say, let's say a person just pushed back against it and said, no, that's not the concept. That's going to be a real problem when you got to give an offering at that time. So there's no way really around it. You just have to understand the concept. And these where our markers start coming in, right? So we start identifying when the new year is. So you can't say it's cold. You can't say it's flour. You can't say it's this. There's certain signs with those things, but these are the markers, right? So now Joel 2 mentioned the first month. Now, let's go back to where we understand that concept from. Let's go to Exodus. Let's go to Exodus 9. It's an important part. Probably the most important part. Exodus 9. Again, when I read this stuff in the past, one brother pointed this out to me. I think we're trying to figure this out. This is probably like 4. I can't keep track of time no more. Man. Yeah, this might have been COVID. Golly. 4.5 years ago? A brother had mentioned this to me, right? And I'm like, dang, this is a good point. But it was still convoluted, and he told me, like, it wasn't as clear as it needed to be as I see it now. But it was a stepping stone to get to where I needed to be. Ultimately, the answer we was trying to figure out. So a brother pointed this out. And I've read Exodus before. And you just, again, just like the lineages is probably the biggest example. People just skip over them. Too many hard words to say. And then these things come back to bite you later, because these things are really intertwined. Like you go down to Matthew 1, like the genealogy of Christ is really important, right? Not to those that believe in the virgin birth, but Exodus 9, right? Let's start up. We're on the back half of the plagues that the Lord is doing, right? Exodus 9 and verse 27. It says, and Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron and said unto them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Entreat the Lord, for it is enough that there be no more mighty thunderings and hail, and I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. And Moses said unto him, as soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands unto the Lord, and the thunder shall cease. Neither shall there be any more hail, that thou mayest know how that the earth is the Lord's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not yet fear the Lord God, because he was a liar, right? Verse 31. And the flax and the barley was smitten. For the barley was an ear, and the flax was bold. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. Now these are, mark these. This is extremely important. Mark these, right? I'm going to read these verses again. Verse 31. And the flax and the barley was smitten because of the plagues, right? Most High is sending all this stuff down. And this is serious because it'll attack livestock, it'll attack the things that you grow, right? You can't eat, you're dead. For the barley was an ear, and the flax was bold, right? Meaning crushed. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. Now, the distinction here, again, is that barley and wheat is contrasted. When we look at these two words, you need to understand what they mean. These are the staples, right? I'm going to show you why. When we jump over just 3 chapters, right? Like we're in Exodus 9. Let's go to Exodus 12. Everybody should know this, but again, for those that don't. When we jump over 3 chapters from Exodus 9 to Exodus 12, we're not jumping to a new year, right? This is the same timeline, same space, same moment. Israel hasn't left Egypt yet. I'm saying that to understand that we're not jumping ahead in something to be like, maybe that's not the same time as Exodus 9. It's the same time. They're getting preparations to leave. But in Exodus 12, we get that marker that lets us know. Exodus 12 and verse 1. It says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." Right? So we now know, even though we read in Genesis 7 that the second month is when the flood came, right? For Noah to get into the ark. We don't know nothing about specifically keeping that, keep this, right? Or else we wouldn't have a situation like this right here for the reader to understand. This is going to be the first or the beginning of your months. Now, how do we know that? Because as we jump over one more chapter, right? One more. Exodus 13. It says, verse 3. "And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month of Abib." Right? Most people know the word. They might not necessarily know what it means. But now we have another marker, right? So as the plagues rained down in Egypt, they made a point to let us know, Moses, as he wrote the first 5, Moses let us know and made a point to let us know that the barley got destroyed and the flax was pulled, right? They got destroyed, but the wheat didn't get destroyed because it wasn't in ear. It wasn't grown up. But the barley and the flax were. Now these are little signals here because we're understanding how this thing in the time frame is. When these things are in ear or grown up, barley and the flax, we have our first of the year, right? So these things have to line up because once we understand that this is called the month of Abib, Abib means what? Barley, green ears, or corn. Now again, these concepts match up. And I want to make this clear too, because again, we were taught incorrectly. Not a knock on anybody, right? I mentioned earlier about knowledge increasing. But the reason why I say this is because it's important to kind of identify these things when you're reading because when the Bible starts to flow like this, like a crisp river, right? Anything that you pull out or infringe upon can throw that motion off, right? And again, hopefully you get it now. Maybe not now, but maybe it'll click later. Understanding when you look at Abib, meaning corn, that is not corn on the cob. That is important to know because there's proverbs, there's instances, there's salvation examples that are tied to you understanding that is barley or wheat or grain, not corn on the cob. That's important because when we have things like a Luke 6 or we have like a Matthew 12 of the disciples of the same account walking through the fields picking corn and they're rubbing their hands together, that's separating an example of separating wheat from the chaff. That is not peeling corn, right? These are salvation examples so you don't understand things like that, right? Something that might just go right over your head, that the disciples are literally doing an example of rubbing their hands together to separate that chaff from the wheat. They're doing that as a biblical example. The Most High tells you don't get carried away with doctrines into the wind, right? That's what chaff is, right? The same thing you'll have an example in Sirach. It's called winnowing. You have the wheat, the side thing in Proverbs as well about grinding pestle in a bowl. The same thing Christ mentions in John 12 about a seed going into the ground and the corn growing up as wheat. So winnowing in Sirach is the same thing as having the grain there and then throwing it up in the air to get the chaff to separate. The same thing the Most High tells us not to be chaff. Don't do that. Be the wheat, right? All these things flow perfectly. That's why I'm saying these things are important for you to understand these things that might kind of seem like they're not important, but they're very important when you understand these salvational points, the parables, these things lining up for us, for our, like, our betterment of advancing and how we understand the truth and how the Most High is talking to us. So Moses made an understanding or an example of us understanding that same time that we have a first month or Passover or a bib is the same time that the barley and the flax are grown up, but the wheat is not, because we have three harvests, right? We have an barley, a wheat, and you see an ingathering in Exodus 22. Now, when you see things, and this is the reason why I say this, when you see something like Genesis 30, when Leah and Rachel are beefing over Jacob, when you see an example of Genesis 30, when Reuben gets sent to go get the mandrakes, it says this is during the wheat harvest. When we understand these timelines, you'll understand what time of the year now we're talking about, not just some weird concept of being like, this is just a wheat harvest. That'll help you to understand and fine tune what time frame of the month we're in, right? The same thing you'll see in Ruth 2. You'll see the same thing in Judith 8 or 9. Judith 8 or 9. Judith's husband dies during the barley harvest, right? Ruth is when Ruth leaves the plains of Moab and comes back with Naomi, the same thing pops up at the end of Ruth about the barley harvest, right? That lets you know what time we're in. So you don't just read over it and skip over it and be like, oh, it's the barley harvest. When is that? I don't know. So when you start looking at these things, when you put all these things together, you have a much clearer picture of understanding how to put yourself in the time and understanding what time period, what month we're in. You are understanding, because we don't have a January, we don't have a September, we don't have none of that stuff, right? So these things make the picture a lot more clear for you. So these things are mentioned to be grown, right? I'm going to show you another example. Let's fast forward. The time's a little bit pushed forward, right? But to make sure, the same way that the feast days are in the same timeline and these stay in the seasons, let's do this same thing with the example of you give me the feast day, right? I'm just going to give you the markers outside of it, right? Let's go to Joshua 2. Joshua chapter 2. Gotta read this whole thing. Joshua 2 is the example of Rahab, them going to send spies to go search out the city, right? Rahab hides the two spies that came because people were coming to look for them to kill them, right? So this is the point, though. I'm going to start at verse 3. Joshua 2 and 3. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, bring forth the men that were come unto thee, which were entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country. And the woman took the two men and hid them, and said thus, there came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were. And it came to pass about the time of the shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither the men went I wot not. Pursue after them quickly, for ye shall overtake them. Now watch this. Verse 6. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them in the stalks of the flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. Now what is that marker again? We have flax once again, right? This is not Moses, right? Moses is dead. Joshua was his minister. Joshua is now leading the charge. So I think Moses is dead at this point. I think Moses passed away. Just to make sure. I think Moses passed away at this point. So Joshua's now leading the charge, right? We have another signal of flax being used to hide these two men. So it helps you understand, well, what time frame we in. Again, it's labeling and marking the time frame. So you can't just see flax and read over it. Now you know it's tied to Exodus 9. When did we see the flax that was grown up? In Exodus 9. The same time we have our marker for our first month, right? So let's jump over to Joshua 3. We're going to keep this in rhythm And we'll see. Somebody will say Joshua. Maybe it's just some leftover flags. We'll see. Joshua chapter 3 in verse uh Joshua chapter 3 and verse 1. Joshua rose early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. And it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host, and they commanded the people, saying, When ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, and about 2,000 cubits by measure. Come not near unto it, that ye may know the way by which ye must go. For ye have not passed this way heretofore. And Joseph said unto the people, Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Let's figure out what the wonder is, right? Verse 6. Joshua spake unto the priests, saying, Take up the ark of the covenant, and pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant, and went before the people. And the Lord said unto Joshua, This day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel, that they may know what, as I was with Moses, so will I be with thee. Verse 8. And thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, When ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand still in Jordan. Now this is another marker for you, and it's very important, extremely important, because it compounds the one that you learn about the flax and the barley, right? I'm going to jump down a little bit. Verse 11. So they're about to cross the Jordan, right? Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passes over before you into Jordan. Now therefore, take you 12 men of the tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priest that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon a heap. And it came to pass, when the people removed their tents to pass over Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped into the brim of the water, for Jordan overfloweth all his banks all the time of the harvest. Key marker. Verse 16. That the waters that came down from above stood in rows upon a heap, very far from the city of Adam, that is beside Zeratin, and those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bare the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan. And the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over the Jordan. Now, what was the miracle, right? Or what was the wonder? Not just that the Most High stopped the Jordan River or split it, right? Split it and stopped it. A key marker is understanding in verse 15, Jordan overfloweth all his banks all the time of the harvest. Now we have multiple harvests again. Which harvest are we talking about? Because we have a barley harvest, we have a wheat harvest, and we have an ingathering, right? Right around tabernacles. So when you see harvest here, just like Ruth, just like Judith, just like Genesis 30, which one are we talking about? It's good to know that, because again, it fine-tunes what you're looking at to put you in that time frame to understand that we're not confused when we read this, or make it as not important. I mentioned that Sirach 3 earlier because there's more things the Most High shows us that we just can't comprehend. And these are one of those things. especially for me, right? So the Jordan overfloweth his banks in the time of this particular harvest, right? So real quick, I'm gonna just get another preset for you. Go to Sirach 24. Just to do here a little and there a little, right? Sirach 24. There's a few up above this and below it, but we'll just read the one that's important for this. Well, I'll read the one above it too. Verse 25. He filleth all things with his wisdom, and as Pison, as tigers in the time of the new fruits, right? The same I mentioned earlier about Christ was mentioned in Matthew 24 about this fig tree, right? The time of the summer, right? You see different things, and these are important to understand. Verse 26 is the point. He maketh the understanding to abound like Euphrates, and as the Jordan in the time of the harvest, right? Which means that the flowing of the Jordan increases and decreases. Well, why would that be? Because as the scriptures has said, that in this time of this harvest, it just so happens that the waters of the Jordan increase. Now, let's go to Jeremiah 18. Let's figure out what the waters, when it says it's cut off the waters from above, let's see what that means. Jeremiah 18. Jeremiah 18. I'm going to just read verse 14. It says, will a man leave the snow of Lebanon, which cometh from the rock of the field? Or shall the cold flowing waters that come from another place be forsaken? Now, this is another example of, metaphorically speaking, but still having verbatim implications, right? If you take it on face value, it still holds weight, but it's still metaphorical. But I gotta figure this out. Not the most tech savvy person, but this would be so much better. It would be better if I had. I'm about to say more, but it would be better if I had a video, because I got video too and pictures, but I don't. So I'm gonna show you this, right? Lebanon, right? Let me show you an example. Real quick, let's go back to Joshua. I'll pair this with it. Go back to Joshua. Joshua 11. Yeah, Joshua 11 in verse 17, right? I'm going to pair this with it just to give you a better understanding. So Joshua 11 in verse 17, it says, even from the mount Halak that goeth up to Seir, even unto Baalgad, in the valley of Lebanon, under Mount Hermon, and all their kings he took and smote them and slew them. Now, I'm reading this for a marker, right? So let's see if you can see this. I don't want to. Yeah, let's see if we can see this. So I wish I could put a video on, but I can't. But I'll do the best that we can. So if a person, hopefully they see this. You can see this. So this right here is a. I hate doing this backwards. This right here is a Mount Hermon, right? That's Mount Hermon. To the left, is that right? Yep. Over here is Lebanon, right? It says Mount Lebanon and Mount Hermon. Now, why is this important? This stupid crap. Because as you look at Mount Hermon, it goes down. You see that? It goes all the way down into the Jordan River. It runs down into the Salt Sea until it gets to the Salt Sea. The Israelites are crossing to get into Canaan from here, right? Now, this is important for a reason. You can look this up. and this is the reason why I said this before. When you look at when it says that the banks of the Jordan River overflow, you can plug it into Google. What is the highest levels of water? What is the highest water levels of the Jordan River? What time of the year? And you start to get your answer, right? The highest levels appear between January to March, right? Now we know that we have a cycle, we have a winter, right? Things have to finish. We have a 12-month cycle. Things have to finish though. But we're not just using, just like for instance, I mentioned earlier about the solar and the lunar year. We're not just using one particular thing. We're using a amalgamation of like a few different things to kind of funnel into one to give us our answer, our understanding, right? So Mount Hermon is a part of Mount Hermon is in Lebanon up there, right? Mount Lebanon. There's a lot of snow up there during the winter, right? Come spring, those snow caps melt and that water runs down into the Jordan River, and the Jordan River water increases during that time of the harvest. They start really rushing waters. There was an old video I saw. Man, it's probably 4 years ago now. I don't know what the video is. I might have it in my notes somewhere. But it was a perfect illustration of a guy standing next to the Jordan in the spring. And the waters was just rushing down, right? And then you start to look at, plug in, the same way you can plug in, when is the time frame of when they harvest flax in Egypt? Same time frame. What is the time frame that the barley is in ear? Same time frame. Increased level of the Jordan? Same time frame. So now you start to look at these things and be like, so, okay, even if people are making the calendar, I want people to understand it while they're making the calendar, understanding how to make, what is the reason for these certain things. It's not that a person just can't make the calendar and be like, right, and like line up, right? Because it's usually falling in between this time frame, March to April time frame. But these clarity helps bring an understanding to maybe questions that we didn't maybe necessarily have answers to or we weren't taught on, right? So I'm hoping this is mindset. It helps, right? So go to Psalms 42 real quick. These are the waters I'm mentioning. This is why I said it was a wonderful work that the Lord was doing at the time, because the Jordan River was high level, coming down heavy, and the water levels were high. In order for them to cross, the Most High had to do a miracle to cut this water off from above and stop it for them to walk over a dry shod. And once they get clear, the water comes. It's kind of like the Red Sea, the same thing, right? So they can carry the ark over because only Levites can touch it. They had to carry this over, and the people had to cross in order to get to the promised land. And it's crazy that you have this exact same situation as the same place that Christ got dipped in, the same way that John the Baptist started his ministry on, right? These miracle areas that these things took place in. So, metaphorical, but literal as well. Go to Psalms 42. Psalms 42 in verse 5. It says, "Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou disquieted in me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him for the help of his countenance. O my God, my soul is cast down within me. Therefore will I remember thee from the land of Jordan and of the Hermonites, from the hill Mizar. Deep calleth unto deep at the noise of thy waterspouts. All thy waves and thy billows are gone over me," right? When you look up Hermonites, it's the same thing is talking about standing at these, what's the word? You can use waterspouts, but there's another word that's kind of drawing a blank on. But the way that this psalm is written is that the same way that you're struggling, right? You might be going through something. Is using the example as the waters coming down heavy in the time of the Jordan and that harvest to weigh over you as the Most High is coming to help you, right? The Most High is going to help you in these things, that the abundance of it comes upon you from the Lord. The same way they're using this example from the Mount Hermon situation. So again, that's why I said, for a person that hasn't heard this, or maybe think I'm lying, I hope not, but a person that hasn't heard this, go look this up and go look up how much snow pops up in Mount Hermon, where those things melt from, and where they run directly down into, purposely increasing that water in the Jordan River. And this is the reason why it's fascinating when you look these things up. The world just confirms what the Bible already said. The same way they're having all this stuff coming about, they're finding out all this information about Israelites being slaves in ancient Egypt. All this information is popping up, right? Lo and behold, at this time, you got nothing but these Edomite small hat dudes is being exposed to a high level, man. Like you can't even hide anymore. You can't even just make the lies up anymore. It's a beautiful thing happening, right? Um, let's go back to Joshua. We're almost done. Joshua. Let's make sure that we're again from Joshua 2 with the flax being for the spies being hidden in the flax. That's why I said I want you to make sure that you're keeping in line with the timeline. Just like Exodus 9 to Exodus 12. I want you to think that some person reading this, we're just jumping. Who knows if it's time frame. Joshua 2, flax, is attached to Joshua 3, timeline, crossing the Jordan, right? Joshua 4, just to make sure to reiterate, Joshua chapter 4 and verse 19. And the people came up out of Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and encamped in Gilgal in the east border of Jericho. Now we know what happens on the 10th day, right? Exodus 12, we pick the lamb, we keep it up until the 14th. So all these, again, that's why this is important to know that timeline is succinct, it's consistent. And then we get to Joshua 5, right? Joshua chapter 5 in verse I'll summarize some of it. Joshua 5 is the recircumcision of the people, right? You had Israelites that came out that were already circumcised. You had a new batch being grown up in the wilderness. They needed to be circumcised, right? Excuse me, it's the other way around. Verse 2, at that time the Lord said unto Joshua, make these sharp knives and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time. And Joshua made him sharp knives and circumcised the children of Israel at the hill of the foreskins. And this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise. All the people that came out of Egypt that were males, even all the men of war, died in the wilderness by the way, after they came out of Egypt. Now all the people that came out were circumcised. There we go. But all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Egypt, they had not been circumcised, right? So just to summarize Joshua 5. Let's jump down. Verse 8. And it came to pass when they had done circumcising all the people that they abode in their places in the camp till they were whole. And the Lord said unto Joshua, this day, succinct timeline, this day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. Wherefore the name of the place is called Gilgal unto this day. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at even in the plains of Jericho. Key marker here, verse 11. And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the self same day. Verse 12. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. Just a concept for those that may not understand. The Most High was giving Israelites manna in the wilderness to sustain them, right? When the Most High delivered them, the manna went away. And now they get to eat off the land of milk and honey, right? Just the understanding of the sustaining the Most High will do with all of us while we're in the wilderness. But as he takes us back to the place that we're originally from, Lord's will, we have the grace and the privilege to be able to experience it and get there. The Most High will deliver you and bring you to a higher level of abundance, right? But that wilderness part is all about that faith, which we're all in now. But I say that for this reason, right? The old corn, eating and understanding this, I say that's for a reason. And this is the reason why I said it's important to understand that these harvests are tied to these feasts. Let's go to let's go to Leviticus 23. And this is going to be the problem. For a person saying something like, even if it drifts, I'm still keeping Passover in winter because I don't understand. That's fine. If a person doesn't understand, that's different. And I guess what will be the reason for a person to understand it and don't do it. But let's put it this way. Let's say somebody doesn't understand. They might see the evidence, but they still feel weird about like somebody saying something like that, right? So I'm gonna answer that question as well before I forget. So that this is the reason why I said earlier I want to play with. I'm not trying to play with semantics, but this is the reason why I said what I said earlier. If you arrive at a point where you've kept the time frame of your 12 months is up, right? Let's say your 12 months is up. And I understand that the accuracy of this is going to be contingent upon us being in the land. I understand that the accuracy of it, right? Like to make sure you are absolutely correct. I understand. This is it kind of goes into the same mindset of people saying, I'm not going to keep the feast days because we're not in the land, right? But you see 1,000 examples of Israelites keeping it outside the land. You see it, Israel keeping the first one in Egypt, right? The first Passover. This doesn't necessarily fly. But I understand the psyche behind why people say certain things. The same way with this, right? The markers that we have of the Jordan River overflowing, of knowing this is a new year, we're in that season, the pole and the flax being there, the wheat not up yet, which that comes during the first fruits timeline, is you understand these harvests are tied to it. So if we run out of time, right? Let's say you come up as the days drift back, you come up short. And we're just being like, man, are we supposed to keep Passover this early? Right? I'm talking about I'm not talking about I'm not talking about if you've kept Passover last year and you kept it in November. I'm not saying that you're running out of time again and your Passover is going to be in October. You adjust for a month. That's not what I mean. What I mean is if we understand that these markers let us know that the time frame that we're in is a March to April timeline, right? The way that the Israelites did this is they have a wave offering that has to be there in order for you to keep the Passover because that offering has to be given. So if a person can't say, we don't have enough barley to give the first fruits of the offering, we're going to keep Passover anyway. You don't see that, right? Like the Most High specifically tells us, and we're going to read it in Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23 in I'm going to start up, verse 4. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. But ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the 7th day is an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, and this isn't a deviation of time again. This is succinct, right? Verse 10, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye be come into the land which I have given unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof. We need to know what harvest that is again. We need to know what harvest that is, right? Because this harvest is tied to an offering. Then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of the harvest unto the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, which would be the Sunday, right? If Passover, and again, this opens another window into Christ's crucifixion, right? So, again, this is a beautifully flowing river. If a sheaf of the first fruits have to be there, which the harvest we know in that time is the barley harvest, right? We're not talking about strawberries. We're talking about the barley harvest. because later down the line, you have to give a first fruits of that. That's not to be confused with the first fruits that comes 50 days later in Pentecost, which is the wheat harvest, right? Different timelines. But this is helping you understand that the harvest, there has to be enough for the sheaf to make a sheaf to give an offering to the Lord, because that has to be offered the day after Passover. It must be waved the day after Passover. If you arrive, and this is the marker, right? If you arrive at the point where you don't have, let's say you're running out of time, we don't have enough time, but the barley is not in ear, then you know we cannot keep it in its season, so we wait. Now, the reason why I mentioned the semantics of double adar or adding a 13th month, if the timeline permits us to do it based on the harvest, that makes sense. But in order to articulate that, you need to know the law. You can't just say to somebody, there's 13 months in the year, because the scriptures don't say that. You can't just say, the Jewish people do a double adar. We're not supposed to follow Jewish people. There's no such thing as double adar, right? I understand the semantics of it. I'm not trying to be nitpicking, because I understand the wording that we have for the 12th month is adar. I'm not saying that I'm trying to be this, inconsiderate person that's really trying to pick apart people's words. But what I'm saying is, if we're trying to be concise and look at what the scripture says as it is written, don't use terminology like doubling adar. Don't say that. We're just keeping in season with what the harvest has shown us, right? Now, a person would have to be in the land, obviously. Like we've looked at last 2 years. We've looked at certain things, and we're trying to figure out barley harvest in Israel, and we've seen certain things like that, right? Now, whether a person trusts who's grabbing a sheaf or looking at it, these ain't no Levites. But you know what I mean. It's trying to understand and get adjusted to how our people did it in the past, right? So it's not important that you press upon somebody to be like, you're doing this wrong, you evil. That's not the point. We're trying to keep it in the spirit of the Most High. The Most High knows everybody's heart. I'm not here to measure nobody's heart. I'm just trying to lend some clarity to an issue that I struggle with, maybe that somebody else is struggling with, as far as understanding when a new year comes in, right? So even in this, if you get to a point where we're just like, time's up, we got to start Passover. If the barley isn't an ear, somebody has to answer the question how you offer this wave offering. You're not going to pass by it. You're not going to give the first fruits of the Most High next 2 months. Because this has to be an ear, the same way we see the example in Exodus 9, that barley was an ear already. And that's why I got destroyed when the Most High sent the plagues down, right? I'll read this too. Verse 14. And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the self same day that ye have brought an offering unto your God. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. So, if a person has not offered the wave offering, you can't eat the new crop. Right? This is the latter rain that's blessed the new crop that's come in this time. So you can't partake in what's come unless you give that offering to the Most High. Right? It's what He requires of us. The best of us, the first fruits of us, is supposed to be dedicated to the Most High. Last scripture, Matthew 13. This kind of goes into the point of what I mentioned in Hosea 6 where we started. We are creation, right? So the importance of understanding our place and how we fit inside of this thing is to understand that you don't bypass what you Israelites are. You brothers and sisters that are Israelites, don't bypass what we are. The importance of how we fit into the construct. Don't let nobody try to water it down. No replacement theology. Know they were all olive skin. We are a significant. It's not to be prideful. The Most High made us in this position, right? It's like saying Christ. It's Christ saying, "I am significant." We know Christ's not going to say He's good. There's no good, nobody good but the Father. We know that that's not a lie, but we know that Christ is good enough to be called good, right? So even in us, we're important in this creation. We need to understand it, because the creation or the harvest is a reflection of us, right? So when you look at certain things and people have certain times to wake up, you have certain times of the harvest, you have certain things happening, right? When the harvest is come at the end, we start what we know is a new year. What we know when the Lord gets back, it's the harvest to end all harvests, right? We know a new year, we're going to know a new world, right? Matthew 13, verse 37. I'm going to read verse 24 and then I'll jump down. Verse 24 says, another parable he put forth. This is Matthew 13, verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field, right? Don't miss those things that you read about. Genesis 1, right? Right? On this third day, the Most High made, this is interesting, the third day, the Most High made these things that bear seed, that replicate themselves, right? The seed, the seed, the seed of Israel, the seed of the chosen, the seed of Abraham, right? These things are important. So when the Lord gives you in a parable of the seed sown in a good field, it comes right back to us again. He's using the harvest to talk to us, right? Jump down to verse 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He said unto him, he answered and said unto them, he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, the wheat from the chaff, the grain, not the corn or the cob, so shall it be in the end of this world. Right? So the harvest is coming. We want to be of the first fruits of the harvest, right? We don't want to be the worst part of it's gonna get parts are gonna get burned. We want to be the best of the best, right? Not impossible. It is difficult. It's supposed to be that way. In this world full of chaos, evil, wickedness, bombing, wars, child touchers in the Oval Office, all these crazy crap going on, you have to maintain your head on your shoulders. So I'm hoping that made sense to those that may have needed it. I'm glad the Most High allowed me to see it, and other brothers have seen it as well. And the Most High has made brothers to say things around me to make me spark my mindset in certain things that you might have thought you had answers to, or you thought it wasn't important, or you bypass it in just reading it. Can't overstate it enough. So, happy Sabbath, y'all. Stay locked in, stay safe. I don't know. I know those that are good at prophecy are waiting on China and Russia to see what they're going to do, right? The Lord controls all things, right? But this is looking good as far as Israel, but it ain't looking good, if you know what I mean. So, y'all make sure y'all send up prayers and make sure you're looking at yourself in the mirror. A lot of us might think that we're ready, but we're not ready. So, keep sending up prayers. Happy Sabbath, Uriah. Most High in Christ bless, fam. Keep sending up prayers. Keep praying for brothers and sisters. I don't know how many Israelites are stuck in the Middle East and crazy stuff is happening over there either. So if people got family over there, even if you don't know, just send up prayers for those that might be over there or over here and they're dealing with whatever they might be dealing with, man. It's a new year. Some people have lost family in this past year. They're not here now. The sad thing. But you're hoping that Most High got him, but I'm sure that's a difficult thing, man. So thank the lucky star that you hear. Every day that you got, every breath that you have is another time to repent. So keep these things in mind. Um, Lord's will. I've got to get back to this stuff, teaching on Fridays, so that's something I'm gonna try to do as well. For those that helped, all praise to the Most High. Um, till next time, y'all. Most High in Christ bless. Shalom, y'all. Happy New Year. Happy Sabbath.